up on the stage, we have our moderator and panelists. Grow or go, knowing when to scale or sell your business. Being moderated by Cynthia Gomez, and participating in today's session is Ms. Janie Martinez Gonzales, Dr. Sengupta, and Ms. Longoria. Please give them a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Gomez, and I am the Interim Director for the Small Business Development Center at Sul Ross State University International. And it is an honor to serve today as a moderator for this session in what I believe is perhaps one of the most difficult decisions that a business owner will have to make throughout the life of their business, and that is whether to grow or to let go. Today's panelists will highlight the value of stability and strong foundations and how they successfully led their companies by following business fundamentals and other strategies. Most importantly, they will offer us with advice on the metrics and strategies that they implemented when decided on a grow or go approach. Let me begin by introducing our panelists, and then I'll invite them to share a little bit about themselves and their experience on this topic. Our first panelist next to me is Dr. Sumantra Sengupta. He is the founding dean for the College of Business Administration at Sul Ross State University International. Next, we also have Ms. Catrina Purcell Longoria, who is a lawyer and partner owner of Longoria and Kelly PLLC. Also with us today is Ms. Janie Martinez Gonzales, and she is the founder and CEO of Webhead Tech. Let's start with Ms. Janie Martinez Gonzales. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Good morning. It's good to be back. I haven't been here since Chad Foster was the mayor. I just realized we have a new mayor at the table, so hopefully I get to meet him. But again, good morning. My name is Janie Martinez Gonzales. I drove in this morning from San Antonio. I started my company when I was a junior in college. I was an internet baby, and so I've been in the digital business transformation industry for about 30 years. And so like many of you, I've gone through several stages, and so I'm here to share with you just some hands-on experience that I've learned the easy way and the hard way. But I've been successful primarily because I've learned to be resilient, agile, and the ability to understand data and how data can support you in the way that you can grow, a way you can pivot, and a way that you can identify new opportunities. And so to me, data being strategic has been very key in my success in the past 30 years.
Ms. Catrina.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Catrina Purcell Longoria. I'm an attorney. I was not only made in Texas, I was made in Eagle Pass, Texas. Born and raised here. Took a short break to go to college at Texas A&M University and law school at St. Mary's School of Law in San Antonio, and took the first train back to Eagle Pass because I knew that this is where I wanted to have a business. I knew this is where I wanted to raise my family, and I knew that there was no better place than Eagle Pass, Texas. I'm the owner of a local regional law firm by the name of Longoria and Kelly. And I also, along with my husband, own a manufacturing business in South Texas as well.
Okay, and finally, Dr. Sengupta.
Thank you. So I'm Dr. Sengupta, the Dean of the Rio Grande College of Business at one of the fast growing universities. I don't have my numbers back up here. Sul Ross State University. My career in two phases. My first 27 years after I finished my degree, I worked in the industry, partnered with Gonzales, Hamilton, and also ran several billion-dollar companies all over the world. And then 10 years back, I decided that higher education was an interesting opportunity for transformation. This is my second deanship, For the last 20 years, I've lived in California, so I'm another Californian who has moved to Texas to spoil the real estate values, which I always enjoy. I've been in Eagle Pass now for a little over a year. I believe I moved here in August of last year. Really happy to be here and excited to share some ideas.
Thank you so much for those introductions. And before we continue, I do want to let you know that we are going to be leaving about 10 minutes before we end the session for some Q&A from the audience. So I do invite you to please raise your hand, and then we'll have someone take a microphone to you. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question. And here we're going to look at the big picture. So this question is for Dr. Sengupta. How do you define scaling?
So, Cynthia is always going to ask me stuff like this. By the way, Cynthia leads our small business development center here, amazing resource businesses. So thank you for everything you do. Defining scale, it's interesting. Scale is, first off, it's a relative term. There is no absolute in scale. Let's start. But when you think about scale, and especially scaling businesses, we're all trying to be something that we are not today. That's what makes this country so great. So scale is trying to be something that you're, if you then dig deeper, there's three aspects that you have to think. Number one is, what are you trying to scale? Is it your product? Is it your service? Or in some cases, is it your mission? Catrina is on the chair of a not-for-profit. They have an amazing mission. I don't know if she'll bring that up, but the fact is, scaling mission is just as important. Then the next aspect you have to think about is an interesting concept which those of us who have spent a lot of time in California, and I've been in California for 20 years, is how long and that is something which is an interesting concept. Not every business is going to be built today to survive generations. Many people are building businesses to have an interesting exit. So when you think about those concepts, the longevity and the reason you are trying to scale, is it for exit? Is it to set up a family business, or is it for some other purpose? Those things are what together make up scale and the definition as it relates to small, medium businesses.
Thank you so much. And so now that we know what scaling means, I would like to ask Ms. Catrina, from your experience as a business owner, what are some indicators that you should look for to know when your business is ready to scale?
Thank you, Cynthia. So as a business owner, I have one perspective, right? I started my own business in 2018. I had been working for 13 years for a regional law firm that did all the administrative work for me. And so one of the biggest challenges I faced as a business owner when I first got starting was knowing what I needed to do administratively and knowing how to deal with all those things. There's several key partners that you need to have in order to get ready to scale or know when you're ready to scale. The first thing that you have to know, and by the way, in my practice, I counsel real estate developers, business owners, oil and gas operators, on a wide range of business-related matters. And so oftentimes I have one of my clients come to me saying, we're going to acquire a new business, we're selling our business, we're starting a new business, and I have to counsel them on how to go about that. Funny thing is, I counsel people on how to go about it, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it myself whenever I started. But I did make sure and find the right partners to help me scale up and to help me reach my goals as far as my own business is concerned. And so some of the strategic partners you need to have are organizations like the Small Business Development Center, When my husband and I were starting our manufacturing business in 2021, the first person I called was Cynthia Gomez. Cynthia Gomez helped me put together a financial plan, a business plan, and helped me get my sales tax and all the different things that I needed to do. So oftentimes what we see in the small business context is you see a small business that is very successful but doesn't have the foundation to grow. That's where you find partners like an attorney like me, an organization like Small Business Development Center. You look at things do you have the right business structure? Are you an entity formed with the state of Texas? Do you have a tax ID number? Do you have a sales tax number? All of these things, organizations like the Small Business Development Center can help you with. So that's one of the first indicators that you look at. Are you ready to scale? Do you have the right foundation and business structure to scale up? The second thing that I would highly recommend to all the small business owners, and I take this from my own personal experience, is have a relationship with a lending partner. And what I mean is make sure that your lending partner knows your business and knows how to help you grow. I'm fortunate to have a great lending partner in IBC Bank. Hector Serna has been with me from the get-go, and he's been a great asset to help me grow my business. When we first started Longoria and Kelly, we were 2 attorneys. We had no idea whether there was growth following that. And now we're sitting here, we're 5 attorneys, 2 offices, and actively seeking additional attorneys to carry the caseload that we have right now. And so we continue to grow, and one of the ways that we've been able to grow is by having a lending partner that understands our business and understands how to help us grow. So Mr. Seddon, I know you're going to talk a little bit about that in your presentation, but I think it's important that all small businesses have a relationship with a lender to help them move that forward. And then lastly, you need to have all your financials in order, right? So if you're scaling or if you're selling, the things that you're going to have in order is you're going to have all of your financials in order. You need to have your books and records where they need to be. Again, something that your financial partners, the Small Business Development Center, all can assist with. And so I think foundationally, Cynthia, when you're looking to scale or sell your business, those are the 3 key components that you have to look at.
Thank you, Catrina. So we learned use your resources, engage in strategic partnerships. And so my next question is for Ms. Janie. As a founder who has led a business through different growth stages, what practical factors should entrepreneurs weigh before deciding to grow further or consider selling? So what factors should entrepreneurs weigh before deciding to grow further or consider selling?
Okay. So we got the academic definition of scaling. We got a very mature view of scaling and what you need to do. But the reality, and I don't know where everybody is in the stage of your business, we have what we call a sole proprietorship. There could be a partnership. You could be a corporation. You could go through several stages such as startup, upstart, and then mature companies. You'll go through different stages in your company, but the reality, at least for me, I was a first generation business person. I was the first to graduate from college. I was the first woman to start a non-traditional business in technology. And yes, I leveraged everything that's just been discussed today. But the reality is that most of us have a vision for a passion, or really the majority of entrepreneurs are out of necessity. In my case, I wanted to break the cycle of poverty. I was the first to do a lot of things, and so I was the first to enter a very non-traditional industry, which was, again, internet technology. So your business model from day one is going to be very organic. You just have the desire to be self-sufficient, to be self-employed. And so all these practical things that we've just discussed really go out the play. They really go out the window. You don't really have that playbook. The playbook ends up happening for a lot of us through a lot of perseverance and resiliency and not giving up. But the reality, as the individual to my right just said, you do need to have a foundation. And most of us will not have the financial literacy or the business acumen in the first couple of years to make a lot of good decisions. We're actually going to make a lot of bad decisions. But through, again, strategic partners and organizations that we just highlighted today, you will get better. But I will tell you this, my father was a mechanic. He had several tire shops, and he failed not because he was not an expert with his skill set or his industry. He failed because he needed to grow skill sets to be able to scale the business. And I think that's the hardest part about being an owner. You do have to learn fundamentals. And I will tell you that the hardest thing for me to have mastered wasn't technology, wasn't selling, but it was really financial literacy and understanding my books. We often will outsource those books to someone, and you will find out that you're not going to be bankable when you want to scale because your credit score is not where it needs to be, or they've stolen money from you and you don't even know because you've been busy growing the business. But at the end of the day, my experience has been is the first question you have to ask yourself is capacity. Do you and your team have the ability to take on more work the next stage? Growth isn't about more customers. It's more than payroll, compliance, proposals, and risk. I learned that every contract, especially if you're doing business with the SBA or any government agency, for example, the state of Texas, that requires multiple back office responsibilities. Another factor is market timing. There were moments when the government funding environment was strong and it made sense to push harder. And at other times when the budgets were tighter, I had to be honest with myself and said, would scaling mean stretching too thin? And finally, capital and energy. Growth requires reinvestment of money and yourself. Entrepreneurs should ask, do I have the financial runway, the personal stamina to push forward, or is it now the right time to consider an exit? Between business and opportunity, the team capacity, and your personal values as a founder, at some point, it is less, can I scale? It is more, do I want to live the life that scaling requires while still protecting commitments we've already made? That's a deeply personal calculation beyond spreadsheets. And so you're going to go through that. And so you'll go through several stages. But at the end of the day, capacity is the key to scaling, even the capacity to have an exit strategy. So I'm looking forward to asking some questions because I can go on and on with real experience, life experiences.
Thank you, Janie. So we talked about indicators and we talked about business fundamentals. I think it's time that we dive deep into strategies. So the first question is also for Ms. Janie. How do personal goals and value, beyond just financial, play a role in choosing whether to scale or exit?
It's because there's an echo when she speaks. So for me, it's about personal goals and values play a role in choosing whether to scale or exit. As I mentioned, for me at my company, Webhead, it's always been about mission and service, not just numbers. You know, today I get to support the Department of Defense, the National Geospatial Agency. I get to support the Air Force and the Army. Our work impact national security and military readiness. That purpose has kept me in committing through ups and downs. But personal goals matter too. I've had, again, as I mentioned earlier, I've had seasons where I was ready to take on more growth and long hours, and others where my values, family, community, even personal health reminded me I didn't need to chase every opportunity. Another big factor is our exiting commitments to clients and staff. Because when you exit, let's say you've had employees that work with you for 25 years or 30. All of that goes into mind because believe me, when you're having conversations about acquisitions, 9 times out of 10, they're buying your book of business. What I mean by your book of business, they're buying your client portfolio. And they're buying you. They really don't care about your employees. And oftentimes, those loyal employees is what allow you to do that capacity to grow. So there's a lot of factors when you're considering acquisitions. As I mentioned, family, community, personal, health. And again, as I mentioned, when you're built long-term relationships with federal partners or develop a team that depends on the stability of that work, it's not just whether you, again, can grow. It's about honoring the work already in place. Sometimes that right choice is to deepen and strengthen existing contracts rather than stretching into something new too quickly. So for me, for example, right now we're going through an acquisition process. I've probably been interviewed already with about 10 different companies, and they can offer you money, but again, acquisitions will require for the owner to stay at least 3 to 5 years. And so I think it's important when you're looking to that next, the acquisition strategic partner that's going to buy you, do you have common values? Are you going to get along? Because you're going to have to commit to 3 to 5 years with that company, and you're no longer the boss. You're going to be required to stay on board. They're going to probably give you so much money up front, and the rest you have to do an earn out. That means that you have to earn out the rest of your exit, the agreement that you've agreed to sell your company for. So whether you stay or you get acquired, each of them will require you to make a decision, a personal decision, that you're ready. And again, that varies for different people. But I will tell you, you know, in Texas, when you look at the demographics of small business, a lot of us are their first or their family owned. So there's a lot of connection to that. Very few of us are going to start a company and say, I'm going to build it to scale and sell. So you're most likely going to be very attached to your company. You got to get to the point in the stage of your company to emotionally divorce yourself from your company. You can care about your company, you can have core values, but divorcing yourself emotionally will allow you to be more strategic, whether you scale or sell. That is a very key component. It's called maturity and making decisions in the different life cycles of your business.
Thank you, Janie. Dr. Sengupta, earlier you mentioned that scaling depends on the reason why you're doing it. Can you expand on that and tell us if there's any metrics or indicators that can guide you to that decision?
Can you guys hear me now? Excellent. So in terms of scaling, you know, it's, you mentioned some really good points. Scaling to sell is very different than scaling to sustain and build your own business. Let's talk about scaling to sell, because that's the next thing. Typically, I go through 8 checkpoints. So if any of you are looking to sell, this is probably a time to get some notes. Again, sometimes the professor in me does come out. Number 1, I think you mentioned this. Are you ready to sell? Very, very important. Just because you say you want to sell doesn't mean you're ready to sell. There's the mental aspect of it, and then there's having clean income statement, P&Ls, balance sheet, and making sure you're ready for diligence. You have to decide what type of buyer are you looking for. Strategic buyers or private equity buyers, or are you just looking to recapitalize? Very different selling process, different metrics. Third, I always look at the strength of the revenue. If you have huge customer concentration, that's going to cost you in the selling process. Because post the sale, if one customer leaves, then that might actually kill your entire multiplier. Next, we look at EBITDA. EBITDA is one of the key metrics we look for. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. It's essentially a measure to say, is your business making money? If your business isn't making money, no level of accounting gimmick is going to turn that into a positive number. And why is that important? Because all of us who buy and sell businesses, we use EBITDA and revenue as a metric for multipliers. Next, strength of your team. You may not be around. I think you mentioned different types of deal structure. Is the buyer is going to look and say, is the business still going to be sustainable if the owner disappears after that? The strength of your balance sheet and the cap table. There's going to be a lot of discussion on debt. I have my banker friends are here. Hector is here. Larry's here. Debt is great. However, people also forget that equity is just as strong. Debt remains on your balance sheet, and people will be looking at the strength of your balance sheet and servicing the debt. And remember, when you're selling your business, most of the time for small businesses, especially if you have, say, an SBA loan, that debt becomes payable before the business will close, because people will buy a business which is debt-free. SBA won't allow you to transfer loans. Now, if you have other types of debt, I have companies I work with that have huge mezz debts. Mezz debt can be carried forward, but strength of the balance sheet, extremely important. All these are metrics, and the final thing, I think, Janie, you mentioned this, is terms of the deal. Deal structuring and terms of the deal are very, very important to understand if you are getting ready to sell, or, as Catrina mentioned, even if you're looking to scale, we all have to hit certain metrics, even if we are looking to scale and not sell, but scale and make sure we are still maintaining a healthy EBITDA. That helps.
Yes, it does. And let's leave the numbers and the metrics on the side, and now let's focus on the people. So for this question for Ms. Catrina, let's dial back for when you first started your business. What is some advice that you can give? What is some advice that you can give when deciding who your founding team will be, and why is this important for your business strategy?
So I have two different life experiences that will play into that question. As mentioned, I've got two different businesses that I oversee. The first being a law practice. For the founding partners in my law practice, it was a pretty simple decision. This is going to sound a little crazy to most of you, but my law partner grew up next door to me, still lives next door to me, and we practiced for a majority of our career together. Doesn't happen to everybody, but he's definitely a family member at this point, and there's an immense amount of trust. And I think that that's the key component. Having a founding partner and a business partner that you can trust is one of the most important things that you can do. Also having a business partner that makes you look better. That's where I'm at. I have an incredibly intelligent partner that makes me look better when I do my job. But it's a balance between the two of us. Obviously, I'm able to get up in front of a room and speak to people with ease, which is not a skill set that he particularly has. But if I have a very specific technical legal question that I need answered and I need assistance with, I'm going to go to my partner. And he's going to help me answer that question. And so one of the things that I've noticed in my particular partnership that I have with my founding partner, Patrick Kelly, is that we really do have very different skill sets that complement each other so well. So when looking at who to partner with in founding a business and starting a business, having somebody that has strengths where you have weaknesses is probably the best thing that you can do as far as identifying partnerships. And trust is also an incredibly important part of that. Now, I flip the coin to the manufacturing business that I have. Very different setup. My husband and I bought into that not having any experience in manufacturing, not having any experience in that particular market. we thought we could do it by ourselves to begin with, and we realized that was a mistake. We needed to find some strategic partners that would help us grow our business as far as the manufacturing is concerned. And so what we did was we looked around for individuals that were in the industry and that could help us with the business growth side of things. And we found some really strategic partners that could help us both on the financial side, as far as helping us fund the business, and that could also help us in the business strategy side. So in both situations that I've personally been in, I've been very fortunate to have some great business partners that have helped move both businesses along. But I do want to take 1 second to talk about something that's equally important, and both of you touched on it. One of the struggles that I've had in both businesses is finding the right employees, right? And so in my legal business, it's incredibly difficult, as you would imagine, to find qualified individuals willing to either relocate or come back to Eagle Pass. I don't know what their problem is. I think Eagle Pass is great, right? And I've been incredibly successful here. I love raising my family here, and I think Eagle Pass has so much to offer. But a lot of young people don't feel that way. How many of us have raised kids that the first thing they want to do is get out of town? And it's not until they kind of get on the far side of their education and their careers that they realize, hey, Eagle Pass actually does have a lot to offer. So one of the things that I've really struggled with as a business owner is finding the partners as far as employees are concerned. And the same is true for the manufacturing business as well. The manufacturing business requires a certain skill set. And you have to have individuals that are specifically trained on things like welding, fabricating, manufacturing. And so in the manufacturing business that we have in Uvalde, Texas, we've had a partnership with the colleges there to help us find a pathway to have skilled employees come in. And so I think as important as it is to have a business partner, your employees also become a vital part of that partnership as well. And if you don't have the right employees, that's a recipe for disaster.
Excellent. And those are some great strategies. But what happens when things don't go as planned? Next, we're going to talk about some mistakes to avoid. My first question is for you, Catrina. What is the biggest mistake you've personally seen or experienced during a scale or exit attempt? Mistake that you have seen.
That's an easy one. Or made. Yeah, no, I can speak to seen it and made it, right? And so one of the things that businesses run into is, and I'll speak to the manufacturing side. On the manufacturing side of our business, there's an obvious demand for the product. And so some of the pitfalls and mistakes that we've made on in the manufacturing business is scaling up in a manner that didn't meet the market demand. Okay, and so when I say that, we've been blessed that in that particular business, we've never had a situation where we didn't have a customer making an order. But during that business started right after the sort of COVID shutdown. And so what you saw was tons of orders coming in without the ability to fulfill those orders because of the delay in materials. We had some material expenses and material jobs that we couldn't get for 9 months, a year. So you would order, let's say in October of 21, and you wouldn't get the materials that you needed to complete that job until October of 22. And so, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of material outlay without the ability to get the income from that outlay for a year and a half down the road. So not truly understanding the forecast that you needed to do to make sure that you had enough cash flow coming in to cover the cash going out was one of the mistakes that I've personally witnessed and also seen in a lot of the businesses that I advise. And so being able to forecast the variations in the market, both with supply and demand, is one of the things that if you misstep, it can be catastrophic to your particular business.
Thank you, Catrina. And yes, I agree. Cash flow is often one of the most often overlooked indicators. So, Ms. Janie, looking back, what key decision or turning point most shaped your business path, and what can we learn from that experience?
For me, after being an internet baby, and we had several great years of commercial success because the internet was new, web development, software development was fairly new. But there got a point where I couldn't scale anymore, and networking led to an opportunity because I think I'm going to go a little bit backwards. One of the key items for my success is that I chose my lane. I built deep credibility, and don't estimate how much saying no can shape your growth or your exit option. But I'm kind of going to go pivot back. Credibility, because I was 21 when I started my business, and there was very few Latinas or just women in IT and tech. It was very challenging to get into the industry, getting into the network specifically, because, there's not a lot of us. And so I had to talk about first, create the environment for success. Again, very few people understood back then what the internet was, what the World Wide Web was, how you're going to use it, how you're going to commoditize it, how you're going to make money from it. And so for me, one of the biggest key decisions was through a networking opportunity. I was handpicked to enter into the federal government. That means doing business with the Department of Defense. So that was the biggest turning point for me when I committed to federal contracting as our backbone. Even though it meant longer sales cycles, as she just mentioned earlier, and higher barriers to entry, at first we tried to be everywhere, commercial, local, and federal, but the discipline of focusing on federal clients, building the right clearance, proving ourselves as a trusted subcontractor and prime to the federal government, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Defense, Air Force, Army, you name it, changed the trajectory of our company. That allowed us to get into the 8A program. That allowed scaling. That allowed also funding. It allowed a lot of things to build the infrastructure that I needed to become a multi-million-dollar organization. And when you come from you're scraping to make payroll every 2 weeks to be able to have a line of credit, I will tell you, my first interest loan was 28%. I know Liffin is here before the Raxion Tejas. My first loan was 28%. Think about that. My second loan with that micro lender was 12%, and then I had to resort to factoring my invoices to get cash to make payroll. Then all of a sudden, I have guaranteed loans by the 8A. I have multi-million-dollar contracts that I could count on for 3 or 5 years. It changes everything, but it also brings enormous responsibility now to discipline yourself as an owner like you never had before. So it taught me that focus creates opportunity. Once we were known for the reliability, whether it was DevSecOps, whether it was software development, whether it was software and engineering, it opened doors that would have stayed closed if we had spread ourselves too thin, and if we had not built credibility, and if we had not done the right things. So again, it is very important that you choose your lane and that you build credibility, because your word is your word. It is often a very small community. We talk about 2 degrees of separation. Literally, it's less than 1 degree. And in today's environment, how interconnected we are, people talk. So you always have to honor your commitments to your clients, to your employees, to your bank, no matter how tough things are. Because when that opportunity comes, it is that credibility, it is your word, it is your past performance, it is your current performance that's going to get you to the next bigger opportunity. So all those things really matter, in addition to what my colleagues have said to the right and the left.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And rather than calling these mistakes, should be called lessons learned. And my last question is for Dr. Sengupta. What are the top reasons exit deals fall apart at the last minute? And how early should you start preparing your business for a potential exit?
So, exits and why do they fall apart? I always say mergers and acquisition, and my experience, it's like a marriage. Unfortunately, 70% of M&A deals fall apart within the first 3 years after they've been consummated. Many deals fall apart before. Why? Because during the diligence process, things pop up that you didn't see. Your P&L statement has entries that shouldn't have been there. Your balance sheet suddenly uncovers assets that are valued, overvalued, and you have to reset it to actually market value. I used to buy companies at one point that were always distressed. And the only way I bought it was on the strength of the balance sheet. Imagine if your balance sheet is overstated or you haven't done a balance sheet valuation. The last thing I will say is the strength of your team. If you're trying to sell a business and there's a team associated, every business has that, whether it's Catrina's business, Janie's business, manufacturing, and suddenly key team members leave or they're not going to stay, that's going to decrease the valuation of the business. These are all things that will be uncovered in what is called the diligence process. Early in my career, I used to think I could do it all on my own. As I've gotten older, not only am I tired, I've realized without a team, you're nobody. Cynthia Gomez runs the SBDC. You guys should, so Catrina's used her. Amazing resource who could be a panelist. She's moderating us. I have to give a shout out to my 4 professors who are here, all in Eagle Pass. Catrina's point, why should they be in Eagle Pass? I have a world famous economist, an international business person, a marketing person, and a finance person, all who are at the Rio Grande College of Business based in Eagle Pass. If you guys can just wave, that'll be awesome. So that's probably the thing. If a deal is going to fail, it is because you have either forgotten a disclosure or you have tried to figure out if you could get the disclosure through the diligence process. Just don't do it. It's just bad habit.
Thank you. And we are running a little bit short on time here, but I do want to end this conversation by telling you and looking at this from the SBDC perspective. I believe that one of our focus should be in teaching the small business owners that they can scale within their means and that they don't need to break the bank to do that. We, as business advisors, can educate them about maximizing efficiency within their employees. And they can do that by focusing on training so that they can be more efficient in what they do. We can also teach them to innovate and to use technology as a tool, especially in financial management. I've seen a lot of our business owners, our business clients, who continue to struggle with financial management. And if they innovate and they use technology as a tool, especially like a software like QuickBooks or any other financial software that they can use, it will make it a lot easier for them. I've seen clients, that they're still doing their record keeping on a notebook, or they do it on an Excel spreadsheet, or even just bank statements, and they are not being efficient themselves. Finally, I want for all of you to stop and to analyze some of the top 500 companies, Fortune 500 companies like Amazon and Walmart. And while those companies operate in completely different sectors, they do share some similarities on how they approach to their business strategies. And one of the ones that stands out to me is that their commitment to technology and innovation. Number 2, their investment on talent. So they focus on their employees, and that is very important. Focusing on employees, on their professional development, on their training, so that they can be more efficient. And then last is their ability to adapt quickly to change. So these are all pillars that allows them to stay competitive and to continue growing. And it doesn't matter how big or small your business is. These are all strategies that any business of any size can learn from. Thank you.